Hi, I'm Stuart from HiFi Pig. I'm here with Stavros from Aries Cerat. What I'm going to do is let Stavros tell you about the speakers that we've got in the system, which I thought were new but are not new apparently, and they've been kept underground for many, many years apparently, but also about the brand new turntable that Aries Cerat are launching at Munich. So over to you, Stavros.
Hi Stu, welcome to our room. This year we decided to, since we got a bigger room, to bring our flagship speakers, which they're not new, but you might think they are because they were underground. We have never officially launched or presented them before. So we said this year, why not? We have the space.
Absolutely, yes.
So these speakers were the actual reason we created the company like 14 years ago.
Okay.
The electronic line was actually developed to develop the speaker. So they were kind of lab tools to develop this speaker we have here. And due course, people really loved our electronics. So the production moved to electronics, which is the majority today of our production. But the core of the company is this speaker. Everything you hear from our electronics to the turntable is developed on this speaker or on the prototype we have at our place for the past 14 years now.
Okay.
Since we started the early development, it went through a lot of stages, which a lot of redesigning about 4 or 5 years ago, which the Mark II came into play. And this is a borrowed speaker from one of our distributors. We already delivered two, so it's not an actually new product.
And what I've noticed is people are coming in the room and they have sat down listening to this system for a long time. They're sat down and you can see them getting really absorbed in the music, which is great to see.
Yes, this is why we do this. You know, it sounds like music. It doesn't sound like with the usual hi-fi terms, bass and you know, imaging. It just sounds. Music just is in the room.
It's very natural and very unforced. And you mentioned the turntable. That's a new product for Munich this year. Yeah,
exactly. The turntable was like a surprise. Nobody knew about it. Even our affiliates. We tried to keep it like a surprise for the show. We said we would not do a turntable, even though I had a ton of designs in my mind and a ton of ideas. My background is aeronautics, mechanical, motion control, so it's more home.
A fairly natural progression.
Exactly, it's materials engineering, so it was more close to home, and I had a ton of ideas that I wanted to implement. And a year ago, we said, we took the business decision to push a lot of funds into it and materialize the ideas I have. So that's why it was super fast from ideas to working prototype. At the show we have a pre-production model, but it's about 90% of the final product.
Okay.
Some details missing like final ergonomics, software, etc.
So what can you tell us a little bit more about the mechanics of the turntable?
Exactly. So the whole idea of the turntable relies on two things. First is we don't like belt drive, we don't like idle. We want direct drive, but direct drive has a ton of problems, which in my opinion up to today they are unsolvable. So we started developing our own motor. It's a very, very powerful motor. It has no iron core, there's no iron in the starter. So in virtual, it's a poleless motor.
So that does away with cogging and...
It has absolutely zero cogging. We have a prototype here. The motor itself, in combination with the software we very tediously developed, is absolutely noiseless. The motor itself, you can touch the motor, you can probe it directly with the electronic stethoscope, with vibrometers. The noise is below the noise floor of the actual measuring equipment.
Wow.
We measured with microphone on the coils. It's absolutely zero noise. It's beyond audio. I think it has a lot of applications outside of audio. Electronic microscope. And it's the noise floor is beyond what you can actually measure.
Wow.
Of the...
That's interesting that you've gone direct drive, because the standard go-to audiophile system for a turntable
The problem
is belt drive.
The problem is that the direct drive has a lot of issues because of the motor noise. It's very difficult to make an actual noiseless motor. The second is how to make the servo not to act as a servo, so it doesn't have the chasing effect and overshooting of speed all the time, which is very horrible in direct drive. And the rumbling of the motor itself, the rumbling noise of the bearings. Our motor has both thrust and radial air bearings.
Okay.
So the motor itself, if you move it, it has not only zero cogging, it can move forever if you unplug it.
Right, okay.
So the motor is completely noiseless. It doesn't have its own, it doesn't have self noise while operation or not.
Okay.
And we went a step beyond, and we developed a hydrodynamic bearing for the platen, which is it's not just a bushing with some oil on it. It's a complete 25 centimeter hydrodynamic, both thrust and radial bearing, which had skid pads. So after a certain speed, the whole platen lifts in the oil bath.
Okay.
So why do we choose that instead of air for the platen? The air is perfect, it's rumble free, but it isolates the platen, which you don't need. Not only you don't need, you don't want that. You want to have dampening of the vibrations of the platen. So what we did is we designed this very, very complex hydrodynamic bearing, which is maintenance free. You only just add oil every 5 years.
Okay.
And it provides super quiet background, rumble-free motion. It's not what the user will say resistance-free. You don't need resistance-free. You need noiseless motion and dampening. So this is the basic structure of the turntable.
And are you doing the turn arm with it, or is that?
Exactly. So the whole thing sits on a base with the tone arm stands, and it's suspended on pendulum, on triple pendulum.
Okay.
And the pendulum itself is on magnets.
Okay.
So you have horizontal and vertical suspension. So the whole 200 kilo turntable is actually floating.
Floating, yeah.
On
Wow.
magnets and on a pendulum. We have two, for this version, we have two pillars for tone arms, which we have two versions of our tone arms. They're both linear. We have a very, very stiff toner bearing for it, because what we find is that the linear trackers usually have very high compliance on the pitch axis.
Okay.
Because of usually low pressure and very low tolerances. So we develop our air bearings, and we hand grind the axis to have 5 microns of accuracy.
Okay.
It's very high pressure bearing, and it has a loading capacity about 150 kilos, so it's super stiff.
Okay.
And it has zero play, which is very, very important to provide a very solid background for its actual the tone arm and the cartridge itself.
And are you doing the cartridge as well, or is that?
No, we don't want to go into that.
Okay. So if I can ask, how much is the turntable with the turn arm?
Turn arm is set is 280,000.
That's not. It's a lot of money in anybody's book, but there are more expensive turntables with less engineering in them. You can tell by the way I'm speaking, I'm completely gobsmacked by this whole system. It's what high-end audio for me is all about. It's the Lamborghinis, the Ferraris of the audio world, and I think that's what Aries Cerat sort of bring to the table, and I love it all. And so I applaud you for sort of stepping out of the out there and putting all this stuff out there, and it's just to experience it is a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you ever so much.
Thank you, Stuart.
Cheers, Stavros.